Hello friends and welcome back. Today we are making one of my favorite fall and wintertime soups, and that is roasted butternut squash. Butternut squash is such an abundant ingredient at this time of year, and it also lasts throughout the winter season if you keep it in the right conditions. So at the farmer's market the other day I picked up some beautiful squash and I actually have roasted them. So to roast the butternut squash, I simply cut them in half and then scoop out all of the seeds. You could save the seeds if you had a garden. Unfortunately, I do not yet. To season my squash, to put it in the oven, I just put a little bit of olive oil, which I rubbed all over the surface, some pink Himalayan salt, some fresh cracked black pepper, and some nutmeg. You can season your squash however you like, but that is my preferred way to season it. I did cut up 3 squashes, but I'm not going to use all of them for this soup. So to roast your squash, my preferred method is to roast them at 375 degrees for about an hour, hour and a half. I always keep an eye on my squash. I originally set the timer for 45 minutes, and then I will check them. Depending on the size of the squash, they will take a different amount of time. So the squash is out of the oven, and I love when you get these nice little kind of caramelized blisters. To test if your squash is ready, I like to find the thickest piece, which is probably this one right here, and to poke it with a fork. And this goes in so easy. It is super well cooked. Excuse the mess, I am actually frying up some pasta for lunch, just having some quick leftovers while I film and make other food. So this will be for dinner, that's for lunch, but this looks delicious. I ended up cooking this for about an hour and a half at 375. Back when I lived in a more humid place, not at altitude, I cooked it typically at 400, but I find where I live now, cooking it at a lower temperature for longer just yields a better result. The squash that I roasted today were, well, 2 of them were about a medium size and 1 of them was rather large. So I'm actually going to just prepare 2 of the squashes for the soup today, and then the other one I'm going to put in the fridge because I want to experiment with making some squash and potato stuffed pierogies. I'm going to use my aunt's recipe for the pierogies and just add in the squash, and I think it'll be so good. So what else do you need for the soup? It's really super simple, which is why I love this recipe. You don't need a lot. The first ingredient you're going to need is an onion. You're just going to dice this up into large pieces and then saute it in a large pot with some olive oil. And then you're also going to need an apple. I'm sure there's probably better varieties you can use, certain varieties that would make it delicious. I just use whatever's in the fridge. This is probably an ambrosia apple, might be a jazz apple. It was just something that we bought. It's in the fridge. It's got a few little bruises and stuff, so it needs to be used. I'm going to put it in the soup. So again, dice this up, put it in with the onion. And then you just scoop out the flesh of your squash, put it in the pot, and add some broth. This is turkey bone broth from our Thanksgiving turkey. Now it has been a little while since Thanksgiving for us. I'm in Canada. And so I just freeze my carcass. I cut it into pieces that will fit in my slow cooker, and I just freeze it until I need to make broth. And I actually made this broth on a video. If you want to see how I made that, that video will be linked up above, here. I can never remember which side, somewhere, eye in the sky. If you're not sure of the ratio of liquid to squash, if your squash are different sizes than mine, or like if they're bigger or smaller, or if you're doubling the batch, for 2 medium-sized squash, I usually do the 2-liter jar of broth, which is about 8 cups. And it is a nice creamy consistency. Oh, look at that, a little piece of skin snuck in. But the thing that I started doing when I was learning to make this soup is to hold back some of the liquid. You don't need to put it all in. You can just put enough to cover your ingredients, let it simmer, and then blend it all up. And then if you need it to be thinner, you can always add more broth. If it is too thin right from the start, I was terrible with this today. If it's too thin right from the get-go, if you put too much broth in right away, unless you have leftover squash like I do here, it's a little more difficult to thicken the soup up nicely. So just hold back a little bit on the liquid, and then you can always add it in. And now I have made this soup where it's been way too liquidy. It's not creamy, it's just liquidy. And you could add some mashed potato flakes if you had them to thicken it up. It'd be more of a potato squash soup. Or you could just eat it thin. You could have it, just put it in a mug and drink it. It is still so delicious that way. My personal preference is just to have it a little thicker, be creamy. And yeah, I will see you in a bit after this has simmered and it's time to blend. So you just let that all simmer together. Once I have the onion, apple, squash, and broth in my pot, I like to let it simmer for typically at least half an hour. Now it is 4 o'clock here today, so I could probably get away with letting it simmer for about 45 minutes. And then I will let it cool slightly so that I can blend it up. If you have an immersion blender, you can blend it while it's still really hot. Just be careful, because I don't have an immersion blender and I'm going to just be using my Blend Tech. I like to let it cool slightly so that I don't risk burning myself. And then I just put it back in the pot and heat it up when it is time to eat dinner. So here is our finished soup. You can see it's a nice creamy consistency and it smells so good. I'm so excited for this soup tonight. I am so hungry. It's now, what time is it? It is about 5:45. The rest of our meal should be ready in about 15 minutes or so. So I'm just going to bring this back up to a good temperature and it will be time to eat. This soup also freezes super well and it lasts in the fridge for, I don't know, a couple of days. Whenever I make this, I mean today I'm only making a single batch, but I have made this in double and triple batches. And it never lasts us long. We absolutely love this soup. Each of my kids will devour a full bowl of this soup. Like I said, it's one of our favorites. So our soup is all done and I am so excited to eat it. I do have a lot of dishes to do. Today has just been a day of cooking and yeah, like it's a mess in here, but I am so excited for this soup. It smells so good, and if you want to see any more recipes from us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoy these cooking videos, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.